But first, to tonight's breaking news. Israel has agreed to a deal that will see 50 Israeli hostages freed in return for a 5-day ceasefire and the release of 150 Palestinian prisoners. The deal was reached during a late-night, 7-hour emergency sitting of the Israeli cabinet. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed the deal, saying his government was obligated to return home all of the hostages. He said in a statement tonight, the government has approved the outline of the first stage of achieving this goal, according to which at least 50 hostages, women and children, will be released over 4 days, during which a pause in the fighting will be held. The release of every additional 10 hostages will result in 1 additional day in the pause. The government of Israel, the IDF and the security services will continue the war in order to return home all of the hostages, complete the elimination of Hamas and ensure that there will be no new threat to the state of Israel from Gaza. The 236 hostages have already been held in captivity for 47 days. Among the first 50 Israeli hostages to be freed are 30 children, 8 mothers and 12 other women. 3 Americans will be among those released, including a 3-year-old girl, Abigail. Now, a reminder, this is just 50 of the 236 Israelis held hostage. There's incredible hope for the hundreds of families who have family members in Gaza. For some, there'll be unimaginable happiness as they're finally reunited. But for others, witnessing these reunions and desperately missing their own loved ones will be crushing. Experts today said the hostages will be in a state of distress.
What we can expect is that they are going to be exhausted. They are going to be, their health is going to be not ideal, and they are going to be traumatized. They have yet to be able to even have an opportunity to process the violent, tragic, terrorist attack in which they were abducted. So this has really been compounded.
Now, it wasn't part of the Israeli government's official statement, but it's been reported that as part of the deal, Hamas would have to provide the Red Cross with access to the remaining hostages. And it's still unclear when this deal, when the pause in fighting, will start. Qatar, which is providing safe harbour to some Hamas political leadership, is reported to have been critical in these negotiations, along with the United States. Now, some are asking why 50 innocent Israelis in return for 150 Palestinian criminals, including terrorists. Well, this is the deal that's been struck, and it shows how eager Israel is to see the return of its beautiful, innocent children. But think about this. 50 innocent Israelis for 150 Palestinian women and youth prisoners. They're criminals. They're not innocent. Among those who'll reportedly be released is a woman who was involved in a terror attack who blew up a gas container that injured a police officer. Now, I've spoken to sources today, and my understanding of how this will work is that each night Hamas will give mediators who will then hand to Israel a list with the names of around 12 hostages who will be freed the next day. Israel doesn't know ahead of time who they'll be. For families of those who are missing, believed to be held hostage, this is going to be an extremely anxious time, hoping that their child, parent, brother or sister will be among those chosen for release. Now, here's some other inside information. Hamas themselves do not have overall clarity of the whereabouts of each of the 236 hostages. Hamas is holding some of the hostages, but I understand others are held by the terror group, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other terrorist organisations. It's understood Hamas only knows about 30 children and 8 mothers, and this is contrary to the information that Israel has about how many women and children are being held hostage in Gaza. There are hopes that the 10-month-old baby, who, as you know, was captured when he was just 9 months old, will be brought home. But the truth is, Israel doesn't even know whether the baby is among those that are being held by Hamas. Now, many of you will rightly so be worried about how Hamas will use the ceasefire, because effectively it is a ceasefire, to regroup and prepare militarily. And let's be clear, Hamas has been pleading for this deal. Well, the IDF spokesman, Jonathan Conricus, admits that he's too concerned that Hamas is going to take advantage of the lull in fighting to potentially attack Israel once again. But he made the point that for the families who are separated from their loved ones, every minute apart matters.
Are you worried that the pause in fighting for the hostage release could be a setback for the IDF and give Hamas time to regroup?
Yeah, one would hope that Hamas has been asking or pleading for this pause for many days now. One would hope that they would use it in order to care for civilians in the southern Gaza Strip and take care of their needs. But I think one would be naive in doing so. Hamas, they don't care about the Palestinians. They don't care about their humanitarian needs. And I fear that Hamas will use the pause in fighting in order to try to resupply and regroup. Of course, we would rather continue to apply pressure on Hamas, continue to fight them and defeat them in their strongholds, as we are doing in northern Gaza City. But this pause is, of course, for a very, very important cause.
You can see the clear dilemma there that Israel has been facing. But it's also worth pointing out that the families of the hostages have been begging and even protesting for the Israeli government to take action. This has become a live political issue for Netanyahu. He's been under pressure over the hostages and what he's doing to free them. The positive news is that all security forces, from the IDF to Mossad and the ISA, are in favour of this deal going ahead. And they say that it ultimately won't have a negative impact on the next phase of the war. Netanyahu was also clear that the war will continue and he's not going to start negotiating a ceasefire after this. But the reality is, as you heard from Jonathan Conricus, the spokesperson for the IDF, this will give Hamas, which has been in retreat, time to reassemble and regroup, potentially even to get more supplies, given fuel and international aid will be allowed into Gaza as part of this deal. Fuel that will most likely be used for rockets, even though it's intended for civilians. The simple fact that Hamas is desperate to negotiate and is willing to release hostages is a clear indication that up until this point, Israel is winning. Hamas hears the sound of Israeli armoured vehicles getting closer and closer. Their tunnels are being destroyed and their military leaders are being killed. And they're running out of supplies and fuel for rockets. It's likely they're going to do everything they can to prolong this 4-day pause. They're not going to be in a hurry to release hostages. It's their only bargaining chip. And one source told me today that it's even likely Hamas will find a reason to argue that Israel has violated the terms of the agreement in order to prolong the ceasefire. But Israel is adamant it won't let the terrorists exploit the deal. As Jonathan Conricus said today, at the end of this war, Israel will free Gaza from Hamas. And I'd add, Israel will free the West from Hamas too, whether the left likes it or not.
At the end of this war, I think that we will free Gaza Strip from Hamas, and at the end of it, the people of Hamas will be Gaza, will be in a much better place than they have been for the last 17 years under the oppressive rule of Hamas.